Welcome back to episode 9 of Blissed Out Podcast.
Yes.
My name's Zach.
My name is Mark.
And today we have a man of many talents, Jason Latas, who is a human performance coach and a quantum
consciousness guide. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here. It's so cool to meet you guys and be here. I love this.
You too. We're super excited.
It's been fun getting to know you before and on brief call. Just the energy is very electric. And
the 10-minute call that lasted 40 minutes. Yeah. I love that.
We'll see what happens here. Right?
Good. I love it.
So Jason, we usually like to start off our podcast with like our guest's journey, like where things shifted, like what life looked like before things really made a big shift.
Yeah.
And before you realized you weren't just a human, but you were actually having a human experience.
That's a big question. Because I was born with the veil a little bit thinner. And as a kid, I thought everybody had glowing light around them, right? I thought that was just normal. Because as a kid, you don't know any different. And fortunately, my mother was curious and didn't shut it down. Because a lot of people are like, don't talk about that. You know, that's creepy. Don't talk about that at dinner. And children will shut it down. But she nurtured it. And she introduced me to some people, and they taught me how to work with it, to integrate it. And as a kid, I learned to see colors. And so I could see colors in people's auras and different things. As I've aged, as I've grown, it's almost moved from here to here. I still see your energy field. Like right now, when I'm looking at you, I see your energy field. And there's, static in different areas. But I don't really see the colors all the time. That's only if we go deep. Sometimes things will show up for me. But since it's moved from seeing to feeling, I'll feel things in my body that are going on in your energy field. And so it's kind of an interesting shift. But back to as a kid, I thought that was normal. They taught me how to talk to my angels and use my body as a pendulum. So, as a kid, I didn't have to do anything freaky. I could just, if I kind of moved a little bit one way or the other, that was my answer, yes or no. And her favorite story was, as a kid, I used to try and walk through walls because in my mind or vision, in my mind's eye, I could tell the walls were permeable, right? And I couldn't figure out why you couldn't walk through it, because I knew there was movement and energy on the other side of the wall. And to me, it's hard to explain, but it was permeable. So this whole matrix or hologram for me as a kid took on a totally different form than I guess your average human, But about 10 years old, I started becoming the little freak that could see energy and talk to his angels. So I wanted to be the cool kid on the playground. So I shut it down hard, just like light switch. No more, my angels still have conversations at night, but I didn't tell anyone about it, right? And when I almost forgot about it. You know what I mean? You just got into being a kid again. And when I finally survived high school, I got out, got my own apartment, and I was probably just before 18. It was the mid-'80s, and Kung Fu and yoga were the big things, right? On TV, Kung Fu. And I'm like, I want to learn that meditation thing. So I, grabbed a book, and back then you had to get a book. And I read and practiced and read and practiced. But within a couple of weeks, I was just meditating in my living room. And all of a sudden, I'm floating above my body looking down. I'm 17 years old, man. And I saw it for a little bit, and then I was like, oh shit, and boom, you're back in your body. Because once you shift from that wave to your analytical brain, movie's over, you're back in your body. That's what I like to teach people, is how to tap into those brain waves so you can travel relaxed, so you know what's going on. And we talked about releasing emotions, teaching people how to do that properly, because if you go Freudian on those emotions, I know I'm shifting on you, you'll go right back into your analytical brain. Movie's over, that emotion goes back into your soft tissue. So, so my journey has been interesting, you know what I mean? And then one thing I teach people, the video series I have, I was telling you guys about, it starts with childhood programming. You know, I learned that as a kid, but I've done a lot of study into it. And over 30 years of coaching and practicing, right, I've realized how your brain was in a different brainwave. You know, had a little emotional brain. All it wanted to know, you didn't even have this frontal lobe. It was just starting to grow. And then it doesn't even come online until your mid-20s. So when these things are happening to you, you're still programming into that emotional brain what's available in this world to you. And that's what keeps people so small, because you learn, you know, life's hard. Money doesn't grow on trees. You learn all this shit that just keeps you small and afraid, right? And it's the adults that were raising you or your caregivers, most of them were just trying to keep you safe. They thought that it was for your own good to teach you that life's hard. And we just grew up, a lot of us, scared, you know, and having these truths that we learned, but people mix up truth with fact, right? And the truth is just a belief that you keep thinking, that's all it is. But people mistake it for fact. And so people that are raised in maybe hardcore belief systems, right? They're not all truths, but they live their lives. That child recorded it all into that program, right, as truths. And you will continue to live those truths until you confront them and change them. You know what I mean? And that's what I love helping people find, is what's holding you back, what's keeping you small. But it's fast, and I'm talking your ears off.
No, this is great.
But what's fascinating to me is your brain. I like to get into spirit, but it's so important to understand this.
Yeah.
Because in spirit, we're perfect, right? We're everywhere. You are a child of God, no matter what that belief system tells you. You cannot be separated from that, right? So in there, we're perfect, but now we're dropped into this meat suit here in Earth School. And this thing's dense, man. It's full of emotions. You learned all this crap as a kid when you're growing up, and you think it's real. But what it does is it wires you into that matrix of what you think is possible for you. And it keeps you small because you believe that's reality, when reality is what you make it. But your brain is just trying to keep you safe, right? And it will keep you small. Like, our brain would be so happy if we never left this room, if we had food, water, and entertainment. Boom, we're safe. Because your great-grandparents, the brain kept them alive long enough to have your grandparents, kept them long enough to have your parents, kept them alive long enough to have you. Did its job. It kept them alive. It kept them safe. So it'll keep you small. It doesn't care what you drive, who you are, who you hang out with, or where you live. It wants you just to stay alive. And it's amazing how, as a child, when you experience these things, it's almost like a child in a beautiful, I would just say a beautiful open environment, right? With no major belief systems. Everything's available. And then as soon as you learn a limitation, you just put a brick down, right? And then the next limitation is another brick. And Grandpa walks with a permanent limp because he was a pioneer. And, you know, he gets more respect in the family because he worked hard and walks with a permanent limp. Well, there's another brick. And pretty soon, you just build this wall around you. And next thing you know, all these beliefs are just bricks that you built around you. And your brain loves it because it's like, cool, you're going to stay alive and long enough to have offspring. You know what I mean? When you have these traumas, there's what I call this, not me, but several doctors, the sequential reasoning of the brain under stress. And we've got more than five physical senses, right? And then all of these other external senses. Well, those are basically feeling what's going on, right? And that electrical current's going up your spine to your brainstem. Right there, they often call your reptile brain, right? Your fight or flight, it's like there's a bouncer. And all the symbols come in, and they look, and they see what's going on. They go through the file cabinet, and they're like, that was just like what happened to when you were 7 years old. Boom. Do the same thing, it'll keep you alive. We keep repeating these patterns. And that's why, because it doesn't get through to the emotional brain. It stops right there, and it doesn't get up to your reasoning center. Your brain sets up tripwires your entire life. And so that's why you can be having a discussion with someone you love, dearly love, and all of a sudden, hot button. And you respond like an idiot. And then later you're like, why did I do that? It's because your brain just sets up these tripwires. But once you start to understand how it all works, and your brain is just trying to keep you safe and small, you can start to unwire and rewire all of these tripwires. And your brain will slowly start to expand. Your consciousness, your vision, your everything. And I noticed this with a lot of my early clients. When I would teach them how they're wired, all of a sudden they're having these crazy lucid dreams. And this is 30 years ago. You know what I mean? I'm just teaching human performance coach, right? And I didn't teach everybody about energy because it wasn't something you just go out and talk about and teach. You know what I mean? You could, but personal trainer, high performance, Olympic athletes, these are people that wanted to perform at high performance. And I love that. I was a triathlete, which means I tried to be an athlete. But as a trainer, I taught them all these things and then noticed they're having these things that I took for granted as a kid, right? Spirit, hearing voices, hearing grandma whisper in my ear, and grandma died 10 years ago. Wow. They start having these experiences and I'm like, oh shit, okay. If I help you rewire, right, and clear these bricks, and I'll use the law of attraction for an example. A lot of people want to teach the law of attraction, right? It's trending, the law of attraction coach. But you don't have to practice the law of attraction. You're already a master. You've been doing it since you were a kid. It's just because what precedes the law of attraction is the law of frequency, and it just is. You emit frequency, and the universe mirrors back frequency-based experiences that match your current frequency. That's all. It's just simple. You know what I mean? It's a mirror. You know, it's like I taught my kids growing up. Every thought's a boomerang. And when you throw it out, it's going to come back. So careful what you put out. And once you start to understand that you're born perfect, you're born a perfect magnet for everything you could ever create, but you start learning truths of everyone around you that's had a hard life and wants to protect you.
Yes, oh my gosh.
So it's not as much the law of attraction. A lot of people teach the law of attraction, and it works. You know, you guys have all heard it. Go sit in that car that you want. Smell it. Act like you're driving it. See it at night. That house, the dream house that you want, right? But visualize everything from the cabinets, you know, to the bathroom, to sleeping in the bed in your mind. It works. But you're doing it in brainwaves, you're doing it in a beta consciousness, which speaks through your consciousness and your ego in our third dimensional realm. So you're creating what you think will make you happy. And that's why I've worked with all these hundreds of millionaires that have 10 homes and 20 cars and, you know, travel the world, but they're miserable because they're creating what they think another house, another this will make them happy.
Right.
And that's what the law of attraction can do for you if you do it in a 3D conscious ego mindset. If you turn that around and say everything, kind of like Rumi said, what did he say? What you're seeking is also seeking you. It is. And he said that, 2,000 years ago? Everything is already attracted to you. But we've got all these blocks that are keeping it at bay. So turn it around. Instead of trying to create what my little brain, you've heard the term, God giggles when you say, you know, I've got it, I can handle it, I know what I'm doing. We're using our little brain here and our little experience and our childhood programming to create what we think will make us happy. When if you just clear all the blocks, what's meant for you is already headed to you. You just got to stop pushing it away with your limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
So you don't even need to practice the law of attraction. You need to learn where the dam that you've built holding that river back. And that's why when you are practicing that or going into meditation or dropping into alpha state right before bed so you can program yourself, you're tapping out of your conscious mind into your subconscious. But always remember, this or better for my highest good, and give it to your higher self. Because your higher self, you know what the view's like from up there? It can see your past, your history, your future. It sees everything and it knows what you need.
Yeah.
But like I said, God's up there giggling. Because it's like, you think you need a house. This is going to make you happy. This is great. You're just watching the movie, man. Well, you're just running around creating all these things and you're still miserable.
Right.
Whereas when you manifest, if you just step back and realize that your current frequency is everything. It's like the law of gravity. You only need to jump off the roof enough times to know that it still works, right? You don't got to practice the law of gravity every day. Same with the law of attraction. Don't practice the law of attraction. Clear everything that's holding you back. Clear all of those truths from your childhood and reframe them and rewire this, and pretty soon everything's just coming to you.
Yeah, wow.
And so those little, I just saw 1111 and then 222, and that's when it starts happening. Celebrate those. And more will start to drift to you, right? And then rewire your human to just be a walking biobeacon, because you already are. The telomere on your DNA are communicating, photo-based communication with everything around you at every millisecond. That's why when you walk into the room, you know, you're like, oh, that's, I don't know about that energy. You're feeling it, man. You're communicating. You're literally like this human biobeacon. But we're held back by all of our limiting beliefs.
Right.
You know, and it's so cool, man. When you just start to help someone unwire stuff, they're like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe what happened. You know, I couldn't find, you know, I've been searching for a job for 6 months and I'm shopping and run into someone with my cart that, you know, I meet someone who gives me the job of my dreams.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's not a coincidence. You're clearing the shit so the river can flow, right? Because it flows. We're born with everything already flowing to us. But we're taught that it's hard work.
Yeah.
We're taught nose to the grindstone. We're taught all of these things. Money doesn't grow on trees. Well, no, it doesn't, but it's the most renewable resource besides water, you know? And it's just fascinating to watch so many people that are asleep, you know?
Yeah.
And that's why Joy and I, you know, your beanie, I love that.
Shout out Buddha gear.
Shout out.
Well, Buddha gear. And we named it, we're not Buddhist. We're not religious at all. We named it Buddha gear because Buddhism is a philosophy of self. And you've probably heard the story, like, you know, the villagers, they came to Buddha and they're like, oh my gosh, are you a prince? And he's like, no. Are you a god? Are you, like, what are you? You know, and he's saying no to all these things. And they're like, well, what are you? And he's like, I'm awake. You know? But he didn't say, and, you know, show up every Saturday or Sunday at this building and drop me 10% and follow these rules and read this book and I'll get you there.
Yep. Because there is hell.
He just went, dude, you can be awake too. You're just sleeping. All of you guys can just wake up, you know what I mean? Let me show you how to do it. He didn't care who you were, where you were. He just wanted to show everybody that everybody is beautiful and perfect. They just need to dust themselves off, man. You know, and that's why I call it Buddha gear, because we're just spreading the seeds of mindfulness, man, and kindness and love.
It's awesome. It's a great vision. It's a great intention to have in a business. So
Thanks.
thank you guys. I have a question, because you've been coaching for 30 years, 30
Yeah.
plus years. What is the most common blockage that you find in your clients?
really, when it comes down to it, is limiting beliefs. And that's why the video series that I have starts with childhood programming. That's the first video. And it's funny because, and I know I talk about social media a lot, but I was around before social media or before computers or cell phones. And so I watched this radical shift. Like, dude, trying to teach brainwaves 20 years ago, people are like, what's that? That's like science fiction. And I'm like, no, you just got to understand, you know, as a child, you're in this brainwave, and trying to teach people how to rewire. But now that everybody's swiping through and they're hearing theta, they're hearing alpha, they're hearing these things, so they're open to it. And everything is radically shifted to where things that I had a really hard time talking about, I can talk about now. But it's really childhood programming, because when we're raised, we basically listen to our caregivers. I don't say parents, because that's not always your parents. A lot of parents, a lot of parents aren't present, and it might be the bus driver on the way to school. That was cool and always told you cool stories, and they told you how life was. Just like when your big brother told you how girls are and your sister told you how guys are, and you're like, oh, you're right in the program. Like, okay, cool. All right. You know, and you grow up thinking these things. Your brain just grows over that emotional brain, and boom, it's sealed in there. It's kind of like buying a new computer, right? No matter how many times you hammer the keys, it's not going to do what you want if it's not in the program. And trying to break habits. And this is what I find so fascinating, is people trying to break habits, you know, repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result, right? Because we're just wired a certain way. But how were we wired? If you want to change those habits, how many people out there are teaching you all of these things, to jump up and down, say all these great things, put notes on your mirror in the morning, right? So you can read it. Okay, but we're in our beta brainwave right now. And I wish I had time to go into brainwaves, and I can if you want to. But we're born in a delta brainwave, primarily. In your mother's womb, you're already in a delta brainwave. You're absorbing energy. You're learning through osmosis. So someone walks into the room and mom doesn't feel safe. We understand scientifically that you're bathed in stress chemicals, right? Because mom didn't feel safe. But you're also in a delta brainwave. You feel the energy of that person that's in the room, even though you're in mom's belly. That's why years later, the same person could walk into the room and you don't feel safe and you don't know why. Because you're learning through a delta brainwave. Right. And then we move into that theta, which is that highly imaginative brainwave, where you can just grab a stick and it's a sword and like everything's Disney, man, right? Highly imaginative, hyper brain growth, trying to learn about life as fast and quick as possible, right? And so it's just taking on all these truths. If I trust you or look up to you and you tell me this is how it is, I'm like, cool, okay, put it in the program. If that's never questioned, it stays in the program, right? And that's how we're wired. I mean, we're built like Legos, man. It's fascinating when you really just think about it.
Yeah.
Then we move into that little alpha wave. And the alpha wave is the zone, right? Getting in the zone.
It's the creative space.
Creative space. Well, right after we get out of that alpha wave, the alpha wave is like that teenager falling asleep in science class, me. Daydreaming, looking out the window, right? Just like, you know, that's that alpha space. Everything's, you're in that zone. But pretty soon we get into our later teens and we realize, oh God, we got to pay rent. We got to, you know what I mean? And all these things, and parents are always stressed about bills, and you got to start adulting. That's when all of a sudden, boom, you shift into this beta pattern. And that's what we're in now. That's the navigating the world brainwave. But beta communicates through your conscious mind and your ego, how yourself wants to be seen and what you understand to be true, right? But your programs were written, and that's your conscious mind. Programs are written in the subconscious. So I don't care how many notes you put on your mirror and how many times you jump up and down and scream all these things that you want to happen. They're beautiful, they're good things to do, but you're still in your conscious mind, and your ego, you still have the mask of the ego on. So that little magic alpha wave is where you can tap in to your subconscious mind while you're still in beta. And that's the place, and theta, when you learn to get there. But that's where you want to go to rewrite these programs. And that's why it's so frustrating that we're like, why do I always do the same thing my mom did or my dad did or my brother did? Because you're trying to change. Well, first it's the tripwire, but your brain will just continue patterns. It loves patterns. As long as you're alive, just keep doing the same thing. Don't change. You don't need a promotion. Just stay right there, man. And understanding this, like I said, that's why it's so frustrating trying to break habits, because everybody's trying to do it in their conscious mind. But the program wasn't written there. So just like your computer, right? It doesn't matter how hard you hit those keys. It's like, dude, I'm not wired to do this. You got to look under the hood and rewire it. Then it's going to do what you want to do. And it's not hard. Well, I shouldn't say it's not hard. It's simple. Most people will make it hard because we taught things are hard, life's hard, and you got to study hard, work hard. Everything's work hard. But once you learn how you're wired, man, you can just start going in, right? And it's fascinating. But to answer your question, I really suck at yes or no answers. That's the biggest thing, is I can't stop doing this. You know, and as a personal trainer, you know, I can't lose weight, I can't do this, I can't do this. And they're still focused on what they can't do, so they get more of it, right? And that's just another frequency thing,
So
you know?
the limited beliefs are the most common blockage.
Yeah.
And so I love everything you said, and like the analogies that you made, and the description, the very visual descriptions. I feel like I was like seeing it very clearly.
Yeah, thanks.
I guess for our audience and for us, like, what does that process technically look like, feel like, and look like? So you're saying you got to get under the hood and you got to change the program.
Yeah.
Right.
It starts with communication and finding out who you are and where you've been and why you're here.
Communication
You know what I mean?
with self.
If I'm working with a client, right,
Okay.
is I need to know who you are.
Okay,
And that's
so
going to start
some
with a
sort of mirror.
conversation. It's not going to be like, okay, you want to change that belief, right? And this is, so you've probably heard this how many times? You go to a coach or someone, I need to change these habits. And they got this 10-step process. You know, like I said, do this, say this every morning, write this down on the wall. But not once are they telling you, because most of them don't get it, your program was written in a subconscious brainwave. Dude, your brainwaves are the frequencies, right? And you're in this frequency up here, you know, just like playing music, man. You want to play this tone, but you know what I mean? Or this tone right here, but all you got is a tuba. It's not going to work. You got to tap into that frequency to rewrite it where it was written and reframe it. When you learn to do that, it's fascinating, because time doesn't exist. I mean, we all get that, right? You know, we're made of atoms, and atoms are just swirling vortexes of infinite possibilities that are existing in the quantum state of every possibility until they're observed. And that's what you're made of. And time doesn't exist below the atom. It just doesn't. The linear time, the way we've learned to calculate it. So once you learn to rewrite these things, you can go back and reframe stuff in your past. And it literally creates like a domino effect. Because think about it, you got this memory that made, now all these other things have happened because of that trauma incident or because of that incident, right? I took a left-hand turn or a right-hand turn because of that, right? Which shifted me into a different place. And that's, if you ever look back, right, that's how I got here. If you go back and rewrite that, all of a sudden, all of those other truths, not all of them, but many of them start to collapse. And it just creates this, whoa. And that's why when you clear one energy block, it's like pulling a cork, you know? and you're like, whoa, that was wild. Okay, I healed that part of, you know, I rewired that part of my childhood programming. But what it does is it opens it up for more stuff to come to the surface. Now you're remembering, because most of us don't have a lot of memories from our childhood, right? Because as a child, when you experience a trauma, and that could just be you got sent to your room and your parents are ashamed of you. It doesn't have to be horrible, but you've got a little child here and their creator is ashamed of them and they're locked in a room. Think how traumatizing that is for a child that's living in their emotional brain. They don't have a frontal lobe. They don't have a reasoning capacity. That's why you can't reason with a child, right? And I've saved a lot of parents' lives and children's lives teaching them that, because you can't reason as much as you want to. They don't have the reasoning capacity. So they're in this emotional brain that just needs to know, I'm safe, I'm okay, I'm loved, everything's gonna be all right. My creators are ashamed of me and angry and yelled at me. Dude, you can't process that. You just spin. And so you don't know what to do with it. You take that trauma and you just want to shove it in the closet. So you shove it deep down into your tissues, right? Into the recesses. And that's how those emotional traumas get stored in our soft tissue and our cellular structure. Once you learn to start to release those, all of a sudden people are coming back and going, man, I can remember, last night I had a dream of me as a kid, and I'm like remembering stuff that I didn't even remember from my childhood. And I said, yeah, because you just opened up a whole new pathway, right? And I'm just fascinated. I'm fascinated with how people are wired. Because like I said, when you really, I'll use enough science and physics to explain it to you, to give you permission to believe it, and then we'll just go into the working through it. But once you start the process, you start to remember your childhood. You start, all these memories come back, and you're like, why am I all of a sudden, they're like, I'm 50 or 60 years old. I don't remember hardly any of my childhood. And now I'm remembering stuff. And I'm like, yeah, because you cleared those boulders that were keeping the river from flowing, which is no different from that law of attraction concept. Is everything's frequency. All you can do is clear the boulders. The water's already flowing to you. Everything you need is already flowing to you and seeking you. You just need to let it in. And it's usually those bricks we built, and it's our limiting beliefs that are just holding it at bay. Because what do you mean I could be a millionaire and it's easy? What do you mean I can make money without working hard? You know what I mean? What do you mean people will respect me if I'm not, back in my day, walking with a permanent limp, or, you know what I mean? Because that's how you gained respect, was I worked hard my entire life, and, everybody respects Grandpa because he worked his ass off and, walks with a limp, and he owns that, man, because that's like...
It's his identity.
That's my identity. I worked hard, you little...
Yeah, exactly.
But we learn this. Mm-hmm. And all we're doing is holding things at bay. It's like you are in your perfect self. Everything is there. It's already flowing to you. I mean, like I said, that's my favorite saying is Rumi, What you seek is also seeking you. When you realize that, and the synchronicities just start to flow, and you recognize and celebrate the synchronicities. Not like, that was weird, you'd never believe what happened. First, you'd never believe, because I don't believe. And you're not seeing it as this beautiful life force flowing to you, because that's normal. Isn't it wild? Well, we just hold at bay because we've been trained that it's hard.
Yeah, you're really highlighting the importance of our words, right?
Cool. I'm rambling.
No, I'm saying, like, you said you wouldn't believe this. That simple thought is almost discrediting the experience.
Well, it is, and that's why I always say celebrate the synchronicity. When you see that 11:11, not just like, that's so cool. Go, wow, what was I thinking? Where was I? What mood was I in? And what thoughts were going through my head when that happened? Just take a moment to see where you were. And you were probably cruising in an alpha wave, or you're probably in a zone, right? Where everything is, you're in flow. When you're in flow, everything flows to you. That's why being in the zone is called, being in the zone. It's like, all of a sudden, Michael Jordan's just making his way through. And I'm not a sports fan, but it's the perfect example. And just
athletes are
boom, and people are like, what's he doing? And it's like, he's being a kid, and he's doing what he loves, and he doesn't even notice what's going on around him. He probably doesn't even hear the crowd, man. He's just in this zone where everything's quiet. He's that kid daydreaming out the window, and he's watching Disney, right? when you can tap back into that, when you can stop adulting for a little bit and drop back into that childish zone, you know, what did Jesus, my favorite rebel, man, what did he say? He's like, you gotta be like a child if you want to get into heaven. And I'm not going to use, you know, those terminologies, but yeah, you got to be a child again.
The cheat code, being silly and being loose. And
yeah, man.
really, it's a good
The ancient Chinese master that's telling jokes, right? You know, that's...
Most like gurus are constantly joking.
Yeah. Because they're watching all these people that are dreaming, walking around, kind of like NPCs, right? Everywhere. Just kind of running into each other. and they're asleep. And there's nothing wrong with that because it's their journey. Mm-hmm. But it's fascinating when you slowly start to rewire things to just get back in flow, because you were born in flow. You're supposed to be in flow. Things are supposed to be easy. Things are supposed to gravitate to you, right? But if you don't try to determine what'll make you happy and what you need, I need that job, that car, that house, and I'm still miserable. When I lived in Maui, I knew more bartenders that had PhDs and master's degrees that were just happy as shit. And they're like, yeah, I spent 15 years in school because my dad was a doctor and all I want to do is please my parents. And they made sure they guided me in the right way, not understanding that they don't know your right way, right? But they're like, and I was a doctor making all this money and I was just miserable. I just hated myself. They're bartending in Maui, man, and just loving life. And it's like, yeah.
Sounds like a good gig to me.
It's amazing what we're trained, right? How we're programmed as a child. And that's why, I know I keep mentioning the video series, and the only reason I'm mentioning that is to try and teach all of this to someone one-on-one, especially on Zoom or things like that. There's so much. And, you know, everyone learns differently. There's visible, there's audible, there's people that want to hear your voice, there's people that want to read it, there's people that have to see the diagram, the words. Everybody learns differently. And you guys understand downloads, right? You know, and I'd always heard, like, sometimes some of these famous writers, they would just download an entire book. You know, one of my favorite books as a kid, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, he was walking down an alleyway in California. Just downloaded the entire book in that alley. Freaked him out. And I was just like, that's fascinating. But about 3 years ago, I was done working with a client and it was evening over here. And I walked out to the car. It was dark. I was under a street light and it was those big fat snowflakes coming down, right? And I didn't have anywhere to go. So I just sat and dropped into just an open-eyed meditation, like a zazen, and tapped out. And next thing you know, it just boom. Because I was in that phase kind of wondering, not like what am I gonna do to make money, but what's the next phase? You know what I mean? Where I've done all this for 30 years, now what? You know what I mean? I don't want to recreate what I've done. In Maui, I worked with more of the high-end movie star market and stuff like that. And it was fun because you made money and it was great because they were movie stars. But I soon realized that they didn't really care. They just wanted to learn stuff, and you know what I mean? And I wasn't getting an energetic return from it. And it was draining me instead of building me up. And when I moved to the mainland, which wasn't my choice, I just had a family emergency and had to sell my entire business and move to the mainland. That was like a culture shock to me. It freaked me out. And because I felt like I had just gone from paradise where I could speak about energy and see the, you know, the spirits in the bamboo forest. And I mean, it was just magical. Someone put me on a Monopoly board and I was just like, oh shit, where am I? You know, I'm around all these people that are just, you know, they in Maui, you do business like it's Ohana. You do business for life. You do business, you treat people like family. Come over here. I was just like, oh my God, most of these people that are knocking on my door or running me for business, they're like, they only want my business once, because in Maui, you don't burn a bridge because it's an island, right? And over here, people didn't care, man. They would just, they just needed your business once. They could burn that bridge because there's 10,000 more bridges. And I was like, oh, and I went into trauma for like 2 years just trying to just tune into this frequency. But I was waiting. I'm like, okay, what's the next? Waiting for that kind of next wave, right? What's going to happen? And that's when I got that download. And I spent the next, I don't know how many months, sticky notes all over the wall, filling up journals and all this stuff. And I didn't know how to do video and all these things. And so I had to kind of learn how. But the download was everything that I've taught my clients over the past 30 years that has been super effective to lead them to this place of acceptance. You know what I mean? And it came out with 6 videos, and it started with childhood programming. And I start that with everyone. A lot of people are like, I know about childhood programming. And I'm like, okay, tell me about it. And they're, well, I heard about it all the time. And I'm like, okay, so you don't know about it. I'm like, let me show you what's holding you back. Well, no, I want to learn to astral travel. And I'm like, dude, you know what I mean? You gotta let off the brakes before you can, accelerate. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because a lot of people just want to jump in and do what's trending on TikTok, and they want to drink ayahuasca and learn to astral travel. And I'm like, no, you got to clean house, man. Because once you do, you don't need the ayahuasca. You know what I mean? Yeah. On water, I can go out and have a complete journey in the forest and just like I'm tripping on shrooms. Because once you learn to tap into that realm, dude, it's there. It's already there. All the plant medicine does for you, and I know I'm bouncing back and forth, but all the plant medicine does for you is it loans you its vision and central nervous system for a moment, so you can look through the veil and see what's out there. It's kind of like window shopping, right? You're looking through the windows. Doesn't mean you own those objects, but you can see what's available, and it opens your visual, it opens your experience. But so many people keep going back to the mushrooms, back to the ayahuasca, and that stuff will tear you up after a while. You know what I mean? It's medicine. It's not daily consumption. You know what I mean? It's showing you what you can do naturally once you're a child again and you clear all the shit and let things flow to you. You know, the fairies will show up in the woods, man. You don't need the plant medicine. But that's what I love. I love teaching people. And that's why the video series starts with childhood programming. And then the second video, and I ask people, watch one video, do the journaling and the mental homework, and wait a week. And it's been funny because 50 years ago, when people read books, they had patience. And they would learn, because knowledge isn't power. How much shit do you think you know from swiping, right? It's just, you can just regurgitate all this stuff, but you don't know it. So like, knowledge isn't power, applied knowledge is power. So I'll say, watch a video, do the homework, which is just journaling and mental. Now listen to your thoughts, right? And ruminate on these lessons. Wait a week, then watch the second video. Because I want them to take a week to integrate this information. People are so excited to learn the next trend or the next thing so they can talk about it with their friends that it doesn't matter how much you can memorize and regurgitate at a party. It's how much have you learned and integrated and put to use in your life. And so it goes from there to understanding your energy field, how to see your energy, how to generate it and see auras. It starts with kind of sun gazing and seeing the auras on trees and plants and animals. And then pretty soon you start to see it on people and you start to see it on yourself. And that's when everything changes. Because you're like, oh shit, that's real, right? And then it goes into taking care of your meat suit, right? Because we're a spirit in a meat suit. We got to take care of this thing. We got to rewire this thing. Then it goes more into the neuroplasticity, understanding your central nervous system, your brain waves. And it's not difficult. I just show you the science, physics, some graphs, and then I talk to you like a real person. You know what I mean? But it's fascinating because most humans, you have to give them a little science and physics so they can give themselves permission to believe it. You know what I mean? Like, oh, trust the science. Okay, I'm with you. Yeah. And then, but it's fun. It's blown my mind because instead of trying to, like right here, teach you about the brain or your central nervous system or your energy, you can watch the video on your own time, rewind if you need to, right? You can see the graphs, you can hear me while you're reading it, then I'm talking, then you integrate it with some homework, and then we meet a couple days later once you've digested it and we're speaking the same language. Now we can take a deep dive. So in that 1 hour I'm going to spend with you after the video, dude, we can dig into stuff that would have taken 4 or 5 hours to try to explain to you. Does that make sense? So it's kind of blown me away. I thought it was just kind of a cool way to more efficiently and affordably get this information out. Because like I said, I don't get off on working with the millionaires and the people that just want to throw money at it so they can tell stories at a party. It's humanity's waking up, and I want to be a small part of that, right?
It's beautiful.
But I realized that the video series, more people are getting it, right?
That's cool. You've seen that.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
Because I didn't think about it that way when I got the download. I'm just like, this will get it out to more people.
Yeah, it's a little more
like I said,
reach.
more affordably for a couple $100. It's something that would take me thousands to teach you in person.
Yeah, because you can only actively teach a certain amount of people.
That too. But it's been fascinating because people watch it at home and then they put the app on and they listen to it at the gym, and pretty soon it's settling in, and then we take a deep dive and stuff clicks.
Yeah.
And they start to shift. I've found in my experience too many coaches or people they're too in love with their own vocabulary, that they want to really impress you with what they know instead of actually you getting the information. You know what I mean? Because you're like, oh God, they know. Yeah, oh my God, this guy knows everything. But dude, if you walk away not digesting it, what good did it do for you? So it's like, I want to teach you a little science, a little physics, and then we just talk, and I try and put it in relative terms. You know what I mean? You're standing on the brake when you need to be on the accelerator. You know, we don't need to deep dive into neural pathways. You know, we can when you get there, but
No, I don't think sometimes those details don't even matter. You know,
they don't.
I like to understand them personally. In my experience, I like to really dissect things.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think for a majority of people, like having a basic understanding is
That's
huge.
why a lot of the breathwork classes that I'll do breathwork meditation classes, but I'll let them know the first 20 minutes is going to be educational. Because I just don't want a room full of people that I'm like, okay, start breathing. Yeah. And they're like, oh God, what's going on? I want to just tell them a little bit, about their brain. It's trying to keep you safe. When we do these breath holds, your brain's, I've got you into this altered state. Now we're going to do a breath hold. Your brain's going to tell you to breathe, right? This is your opportunity while you're in that subconscious realm to tell your brain, no, it's okay. I'm safe. Because as soon as they hold their breath, right? Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm always like, close your eyes, relax your chin, relax your face, relax you're basically, relax everything. Relax your shoulders. Sorry, I got on a tangent there for a second. But, and then rock back and forth a little bit. And it's teaching people, because like on the breath holds, I like to go a little deeper into what's going on in your psyche and in your body when it's happening so people understand this is your opportunity to tell your brain, no, I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm all right. Because you're tapping into that emotional brain as a child. I'm safe, I'm okay, everything's all right. I've got plenty of oxygen in my body. I'm just going to relax into this. Once you do that, your brain will fight it because it takes several breath holds. And pretty soon by the end of the class, people are holding their breath for almost a minute and they're like, I've never held my breath before. I was scared as shit to do that. And their brain goes like this, whoop, and it opens up and it expands your boundaries, right? And the next time you tell your brain, no, I can do that, I'm okay. Whoop. And pretty soon you've expanded your boundaries. Your brain doesn't just keep you safe, but through cognitive dissonance and visual dissonance, it will edit your reality, right? Like cognitive dissonance, you're speaking to someone who has a really strong belief system. If it defies their belief system, they can look right at you. And you guys have probably experienced this. I've never experienced it more than I have in Utah, but you can be explaining, oh yeah, oh okay, yeah. They're not hearing a damn word because their brain is just they're being polite. They're being humans, they're hearing stuff. Brain's not recording anything because it defies their belief system. And they're afraid to branch out of that belief system. And so it's you've heard of cognitive dissonance. It's where your brain creates this dissonance in your system where it doesn't record what just happened. You can talk to them later and they don't remember most of the conversation. And then you got visual blindness. Dude, this blows me away. I've worked with security guards, police officers, people that are trained to observe, right? Trained to expand their vision and observe and be aware of their surroundings. And I'll play certain videos for them and I'll say, okay, but I'll sidetrack them a little bit. He'll say, I've got one, you may have seen it, basketball players, and there's just a bunch of them. Some of them have white balls and some of them have regular basketballs. And I'm like, okay, so count how many times the white balls hit the ground. And it's just a 1 minute video, I think. And at some point in the middle of the video, some dude 6 foot tall in a gorilla outfit walks out in the middle and goes like that and walks across the court. And afterwards, no one says anything. They're counting balls. Yeah. These are people that were taught to observe and protect. Afterwards, I'll say, okay, if you saw it, don't say anything. But how many people saw something? Most of them didn't see it. And I'll be like, guys, how many people saw the gorilla? And they'll laugh. They'll be like, oh, yeah, that's funny. These are police officers. Wow. I replay it now that they know what they're looking for, and they completely shit. They're just like...
They probably think it was a new video or something.
Yeah. They're like, yeah, dude, that's not the same video. Wow. Visual dissonance. Or perceptual blindness is really what they call it. It's basically just your brain keeping you safe. But it's a fascinating experiment because I can speak to someone with a deep belief system and they will listen the entire time, but won't record any of it because that belief system and the blocks are so strong. Same thing, someone who's trained to observe, you can show them something, but if it's not in their perceived expectations, oftentimes your body right now, dude, there's like movement going on over here. There's like a spirit behind you. There's so much going on in this room that we don't see because we only see a small spectrum of that light spectrum, the entire light spectrum. We see like a sliver of it, but yet we think we're humans and we're the smartest animals on the planet. We see everything, right? Or know everything. Nah, your brain keeps you small. And if it's not in your belief system, and that's why I tell people all the time, like I said, knowledge isn't power. You know, just scrolling and regurgitating this shit at the party doesn't mean you know it or have integrated it. And that's what keeps people stuck. And I see more people stuck now because it's like, oh yeah, my favorite, so-and-so, they were talking about that. And I say, good, tell me about it. I don't know, but I can repeat what they said. Right. What does that mean? I don't know. I'm like, then you don't know it. You've just memorized more shit to talk about at the party, but you haven't learned anything. And your brain will continue to do that. That's why people are like, oh yeah, I know that. I start my video series with a little bit of a talk and I'll say, please watch just with childhood fascination. Just watch this video, kick back, enjoy it, have fun with it. Try not to say, I know that. Because that's the first thing people want to say. But we want to be the smartest person in the room, or we want to, you know what I mean? We want to know stuff, it's cool. But as soon as you go, oh, I know that, your brain is super efficient. It'll stop learning. It's got other shit to take care of. right? But if you're focused, it'll learn, it'll pick it up if you're open. But as soon as you say, oh yeah, I know that, your brain won't record everything you just heard. It's efficient. It's like, why am I going to do that? I got, other stuff to do. And it's fascinating. Just the whole dissonance that your brain will keep you small. It'll edit your reality, it'll edit things you hear, and it'll radically edit things you see. And that's what's so cool, because once you start to kind of open up those channels and you start to see energy, and then pretty soon you're seeing things move, because I won't go this deep, but usually when you start to see energy, it's in your periphery. And when I was a kid, I took a military survival course, and they taught us how to do night vision at night for the cool goggles. And there's a visual purple, I can't remember what it's called, around the outside of your retina that picks up movement in your periphery. And that's why your peripheral vision is so important. Because when we focus on things, we don't see everything, because we're focusing on what we perceive is in front of us. And your brain is creating what you're expecting to see. And so you don't see 50% of what's going on, because your brain, you don't expect to see it. Your perceptual blindness, right? And it's crazy. And people start to see things, and they start to get stuff in their periphery. Because when I start to teach someone how to see an aura, it's kind of like those pictures in the 80s that were just kind of scrambled, but if you relaxed your eyes, like something appeared. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how you see energy. And that's how, have you guys ever sun gazed?
Once.
Yeah, remind me and I'll send you my ebook. I wrote a 35-page ebook a couple weeks ago on solar frequencies and seeing energy and sun gazing. And dude, it will change everything for you.
Yeah.
Because once you learn, especially through sun gazing, to relax that gaze, once you start to see energy, you'll see movement in the periphery, because we have different receptors that pick up movement in the ether. But as soon as, that's why most people have seen so much, but you see something, you go, and you turn, but then you focus, and your perception takes over. So as soon as I see something moving in the forest, and I turn, and I'm like, it's just my mind. Wasn't your mind, man. You're seeing into the ether through your periphery. And that's one of the secrets to starting to tune into what's around you. Because as soon as you focus, your perception and expectation takes over, and your brain edits your reality back into what you expect to see. Dude, it's amazing how our brain keeps us so small.
It's crazy. I feel like there's so many questions I could ask about that, but I do want to go into the question about, the sun and how you're starting. I feel like how I met you was through Instagram, and I saw your stories about
the solar posts,
solar flares, the solar posts, which is amazing. And obviously Huli introduced me to you on Instagram. But I just want to know a little bit more about the sun. Just like the main question I have is, for the people watching especially too, is I know this, but a lot of people don't. But does the sun affect our DNA, and are we getting upgraded?
Yes.
Every time, so that's
there's a reason they tell you to wear sunscreen, right?
I would hope so, right? So you don't feel that.
There's a reason, there's more than one reason they're geoengineering the skies. It's not just to make rain, it's to block the sunlight. Yeah. And I've had a love affair with the sun for 15, 20 years, somewhere in there. It's not like I set a clock. And I learned to sun gaze, back in the early 2000s. And it blew me away. Because I was raised in Phoenix, lived in Maui, and all these sunny areas, right? I love the sun. And, but once you understand, sun gazing is thousands of years old. It's been used by cultures since the beginning of time to open up your vision, to open up and open up your pineal gland. We have crystals, and you've probably heard this. You did the Dispenza stuff, right? I think he talks about it. I don't do a lot of his stuff, so I don't know. But we have crystals in our eyes, right? Our eyes and our ears are the two of our five senses that actually have neural pathways to our brain, straight to the brain. Isn't that cool? Not your ears, your nose and your eyes, sorry.
Okay.
Because smelling picks up frequency, it picks up memories. You can smell something, aromatherapy, and all of a sudden, memories, because you got a neural pathway from your nose into your brain. Your eyes are the same way. And the light, we were taught that you see light and frequency, or your eyes do, and then it picks it up, your brain interprets it, and it shows you what you're looking at, right? Keep it really simple in biology. What they don't tell you is it does that, but what we were just talking about, the brain keeping you small, editing your reality, yes, it does. It picks up that little bit of frequency that we can pick up on, but then it mixes it with your childhood programming and what you believe is available to you in this world. That's why when someone has a really, really, really strong belief system, they're blind, man. There's a lot that they don't see, there's a lot they don't hear, because their brain protects them from that because it's dangerous and it's not in alignment with their belief system. So we interpret photons, light-based frequency, and then we mix it with what we believe is available for us in this world. But with the sun gazing, when the sun's coming up, it's about probably like 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes at night, right before it sets, that you can gaze right at the sun, right? And you relax your eyes, and you just kind of, almost like you're looking halfway between here and your subject, right? And you just relax your gaze. The first time I ever did it, I'm like, this is cool, I'm gonna give it a try. And then I'm like, oh shit. And you know the old photographs when they're the negatives, right? It started going black, yellow, like it was a negative picture and then a real picture, and negative. And I'm trying not to, because what we'll do is we'll focus on it.
Right.
And then it goes away and it stops. And I'm like, okay, relax. And you start seeing stuff, you focus on it, turns off. And you gotta learn to relax, which brings you down into that, closer to that alpha wave, right? And then pretty soon, there's fire rings around the sun. And then here's the best, because the mountains will get lines of energy around them. And then before you know it, it's blinking and it's doing all this stuff. And everybody's slightly different, but it's fun because a lot of the people that I teach see really similar things. But you get into it and I've had times where I've seen sacred geometry on the sun.
Wow.
Dude.
Wow.
And then you close your eyes and the back of your forehead or your movie screen, wherever yours is, you'll see colors and you'll see geometry. I've seen everything from what looked like crazy alien hieroglyphs to light language to I don't know what it was. But you'll see so much. But it's also activating the crystals in your retina, right? We have similar crystals in our pineal gland. And so when it activates those, it goes right through the neural pathway and it activates the crystals in your pineal gland. And science is going to tell you, well, yeah, that's what makes you produce more melatonin, and right, and all these other things, which it does. But it also has a piezoelectric effect on those crystals in your pineal gland, which also can create DMT
Yes.
and dopamine. But it opens up your vision. And dude, some of the deepest meditations you'll ever have. I got about 5 pages. Wow. 5 pages in the ebook explain ways to sun gaze and then I got a short video for beginners, but remind me and I'll send it to you guys.
Cool.
But it's fascinating. So back to your question. Been sun gazing for 15, 16 years, right? And so I'm just fascinated by the sun, so I want to learn a little bit more, right? And dive a little deeper. And my nerdy thing to do on social media was when there was an X-class flare, I'd be like, hey, here's an X-class flare. Did anybody feel it? You know what I mean? This is like, 3 years ago. No one's even talking about the sun.
Huli was watching those. Your posts.
Yes. And so and it was only every few months, right? Because the sun goes through 11-year-ish cycles. At some point during that cycle, before its magnetic poles shift, it goes through what's called solar max, and it just goes nuts, right? Yeah. And I had heard all about it, but since I had been sun gazing and stuff, I hadn't ever experienced it, right? Or that I knew of, right? Because I wasn't really studying the sun until about 8 years ago. And I would post it because empaths would be like, "Oh yeah, something woke me up last night," or I wondered what that was. And it was just kind of a fun thing I did every now and then. Late in 2023, I was doing another one. Hey, there was an X-class flare, cool. And then a couple days later, there's another X-class flare. And then the next day, and I'm like, oh shit, what's going on? Like, I've never seen this much activity. And I started studying it and following it. And no one was even talking about this stuff because it wasn't trending yet. But, because like I said, that was just my nerd thing to be like, anybody feel it? And people are like, dude, you're a dork. It's just kind of funny. And I'm like, yeah, I know, I like that stuff. And pretty soon, it just kept going and going and going. And all of a sudden we were having like 20 flares in one day. Wow. They categorize them from little C's to M-class flares to X-class flares are the big ones. We had days when there was like 20 C-class flares, 10 M-class flares, and 3 X-class flares in one day.
Whoa.
But it was crazy. It blew my mind. And I'm like, this is awesome, right? I started digging deeper and deeper. And I started making daily videos. But what was fascinating, we were talking about quantifying data, right? Mm-hmm. I have a global audience. So people would start reaching out, they'd see the video and they're like, oh my gosh, what does this mean? What's going on? And I would have someone in South America that has the same symptoms as someone in London and Australia and all these other places. And pretty soon I'm like, okay, wait, there's a pattern here. There is something happening. And so in my understanding of energy, right, in your central nervous system, those massive flares, I mean, you could fit 100 Earths across the sun,
So what is a flare? Like,
a solar flare is like a big magnetic release of X-ray energy, really. And it's just an enormous flare. They can be like 10 to 50 times the size of Earth. And it's just woof, and it's just a big flame, right? Those only take about 2 hours to hit Earth. Fortunately, we have this electromagnetic field, or we'd get cooked, right? But you can imagine if Earth is this big and the sun's this big, how much that's rattling the Earth's which is affecting the Schumann resonance. But if it's affecting the Earth, which is this big, dude, you have an electromagnetic field around your body. How big are you, or how small are you? You're not even a grain of sand. Mm-hmm. So it's hammering your electromagnetic field. And we're protected. We're not getting direct hit. But what gets through? And so every cell in your body has an electromagnetic field. You're made of atoms, which are an electromagnetic field. And I'm like, okay, wait. Let's do the math here. We're getting rattled hard. And so I started kind of tracking what was going on as these things were happening, similar, and now everyone calls them ascension symptoms, right? Were happening. But in the beginning, it was people were going, normally I'd make an X-class flare post and people were like, yeah, you're such a dork, or, whatever. Some people felt it. Now people were like, I'm feeling something. What's going on? And they started listening up. But what I noticed is it's almost like the sun was like, all right, you frickin' humans, you won't just wake the frick up, so I'm firing this up. And it started waking people up. Like all of a sudden people are like, what's going on? I feel different. I got tingles. I got, I'm hearing tones in my ears, which is awesome.
Right. Yeah.
I could take a deep dive on that. But then within a couple months, it got even heavier. People were starting to have suppressed emotions come up, right? And suppressed emotions, suppressed and repressed. Suppressed are the emotions that we just don't speak our truth. We suppress emotions every day, right? And if you understand what's going on, you find a place to release it. You roll down your windows and you scream on your way home from work, or you have breath work or exercise and you release that. Most people don't. They don't speak their truth when they leave the house. They don't speak their truth to their boss. They repress all these emotions. Well, those started to come up because as I started talking to people, I'm like, okay, those are just basic repressed emotions that we're releasing. Then the next phase was the repressed emotions and the traumas. That's when it started getting heavy because those traumas, like we said at the beginning of the podcast, as a child, you put those deep down deep and you forget about them. You don't want to think about it ever again. That's why we don't remember most of our childhood. And so it was rattling our cages so hard that it was literally bringing up all these emotions. The stuff we used to have to work on was now just being released. But people don't know how to release emotions. They just know how to stuff them down, right? And that's why, like I said, at a breathwork class or something like that, it's so damn important to explain to people what an emotion is, how to release it, because, and I'll circle back on that. And then I just noticed how things were building and building and building. And now people are lucid dreaming. And dude, I had times when, because I'll astral travel, I can kind of tap out of my body even in like a waking state. But I had times when I call them resets, kind of like resetting your phone when you get a download. You got to shut your phone off, right? And then it accepts the download and rewires it. We're the same way. And when you get these downloads, I'll just during the day, I'll like feel it. I was talking in the parking lot, that toroidal energy, it's like coming through here. And that's my signal to go shut down for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever happens. But dude, I was starting to like, portals would open. It was like a movie where you'd see yourself like falling through these portals and visiting other areas. And then I would feel myself 20 minutes later, which seemed like hours. Like 20 minutes. I'm like, oh my God. As I came back into my body, I'm like, hey Joy, were you vacuuming or doing something downstairs? It felt like someone was bouncing the bed. It was the craziest freaking thing. I've never felt this in astral traveling, but something happened. I went so deep, left my body. When I came back, I realized it was my heartbeat. Because when you travel into spirit, sometimes the reentry process, you got to come back into this dense body. And it's noisy, man. You got blood flowing, you got your lungs breathing, you got the heart going. Like if you ever did a stethoscope, that's what it sounds like when you come back from spirit back into your body. But anyway, other people were having similar experiences. And it's just been fascinating watching people wake up. And you'll notice some people feel it and other people are like, I don't know what you're talking about, man. Sure. And that's fine. Those people are anchored pretty heavy in 3D. Sure. And the ones that are feeling it are the empaths, the ones that are open, the ones that are getting it. And that's why I had a lot of people just calling me and saying, my husband thinks I'm crazy. All my friends think I'm crazy. And I said, yeah, and that's okay. Just don't tell them about it. You know what I mean? Find someone that you can talk to, but don't try to explain it because they're going to shame you. You're going to suppress it, which is just the pattern that you learned as a kid, right? And those that have been doing the work and working through this, I mean, I got people that didn't even understand energy that are like, I get this one lady in Texas, she's like, she had no idea what energy was. And every morning I wake up to like something new. She's like, and I saw this and all of a sudden I saw faces and there was a light body at the end of my bed. And
very cool.
It's all there. Yeah. We just don't see it because we're not open to it. But everyone that's doing the work and really tuning in and meditating and understanding their brainwaves are starting to tap into these crazy realms of experiences, and it's been freaking awesome. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay, cool.
100%. I have like one question to lead into this. God, so much good information. So do you believe that there is something different happening now though with the sun? Like I know we have a solar maximum every like 11 years, right?
There's been a shift.
Oh yeah, you're good. I feel like what I've heard from people and my awakening has only been like a year and a half, but I feel like I woke up at the most perfect time. Like you're saying, a lot of people now are just constantly waking up.
Yes.
And I think there's like, from what I've been hearing and what I feel in my heart, And my experiences in meditation too is like, I feel like there is a big story around all this. Like we are in a time, literally a biblical time, right?
Earth's awakening.
Yeah, you get pretty woo-woo, and
Yeah.
it's kind of like the direction I'd love to go into.
Yes,
But
there
yes,
was.
in general, yes.
There was. There's been a huge shift. What's been fascinating recently is we've got these enormous solar flares coming around. We're seeing them fire off the backside of the sun, on the side of the sun, and they're being recorded as X-class flares, which are huge. But since it's the backside, they're only recording the frequency from Earth facing. So they're probably like X3, X4, X5. But these big boiling sunspots are coming around, and I'm like, yeah, okay, cool. We got some big stuff coming. And they will just continue to boil and just launch little C-class flares and rotate around the sun. It takes a little over a week, and they rotate away. And then another big round is coming right now. And then they've mellowed out. And it's really wild. More coronal holes. We're experiencing more solar wind, more heavily charged particles, more heavy dense protons, which will literally like pass through you like an X-ray, and they penetrate and they affect you at the cellular level. But they're literally like rattling our DNA, and I want to say decoding, but I can't quantify that. But they clearly are opening up channels of consciousness and portals. Your DNA is a portal. You create biophotons, and your every DNA literally is a portal, and you're made of billions of portals. It's crazy shit. We need to get down there. But what happened, that lunar eclipse, right? Something shifted.
Yes.
Dude, my whole inbox was full of everybody just like, dude, what just happened? And then it just went dense. Yes. Like, dude, I had stuff disappearing and appearing in my house.
Right?
Yeah. People appearing and disappearing. People seeing, I call it the window effect, where you're seeing into other timelines, but there's NPCs over there that don't see you. We're seeing into other versions, quantum versions of ourself. We're getting, like you said, the flash in the crystal. That's happening, but you're seeing yourself in another realm. And so whatever's happening, it's totally amplified especially for those that are doing the work, right? That aren't just going, this is crazy woo-woo shit. Because your brain will go, yeah, okay, it is. And it'll just shut it off, right? 100%. If you're open to it and you're experiencing this and meditating. So we just went into this deep, like 6 weeks of like exhaustion. Complete lethargy, but also crazy experiences. But when we get bathed, the like I said, there's more coronal holes, right? Which we're getting solar wind hits us totally differently. And what it's doing is it's flopping your circadian rhythms. That's why most people can't sleep, or not a lot of people can't sleep at night. They're up all night, but they can take a deep nap during the day, because it's screwing with your circadian rhythms. So get out, before we end this, get out, get barefoot every morning on the earth, gaze into the sky, get some sunlight at least in your retina, right? Yeah. And it'll help you reset your circadian rhythms. And then we just had the other eclipse, right? The solar eclipse. Yeah. And it was almost like that closed the door.
I know, yeah.
It was the wildest thing, because once again, my inbox is full of people like, oh my gosh, I'm starting to come out of this. Yeah. Yeah. And like I said, you want to think it's happening, but when people are reaching out from all over the world, they all have the same damn story. It's so cool. And so it's been amazing. And then now they're finding these chambers in Egypt.
I know.
Dude, the halls of Amenti are opening.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go. Like that's a huge.
And there's pyramids all over the world, just waiting.
Yes, I know. Oh my gosh.
Just waiting.
Okay, well, we're gonna end this because I feel like we'll just have to keep doing more of these. But...
I know.
Okay, so I'm gonna end it.
This was fun.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Before you end it, let's have Jason just like plug
your stuff.
Plug my stuff.
Yes, your website. And
oh my gosh.
I will put a link.
It's just my name, jasonlatas.com. Find me on Instagram, please. I'm the only Jason Latas on there. fortunately. Jason Latas _ quantum body. And find me on there. Reach out with questions. I love helping people that are curious, right? Tap into that next level. So yeah, jasonlatas.com. I've got a video series that'll blow your mind, that'll teach you how to rewire the meat suit. Tune in, because honestly, once you start to understand how we're wired and you start rewiring, and like I said, fixing those tripwires, right? Getting rid of those tripwires that your brain keeps you in patterns, everything opens up. And remember, what you're seeking is also seeking you. You don't need to visualize what you want because you don't know what you need, okay? You just need to drop the shield, right? Clear yourself to become an open vessel to receive what's already meant for you. And it's freaking magic.
Very beautiful.
We will link everything in the description. So.
Nice.
And shout out Buddha Gear also.
Yeah,
Yes, we'll have a link for that too.
Cool. Yeah, right on.
I think that's
Thank you
it.
guys.
Yeah,
this was
that's
awesm.
it.
Let's do it again.
No,
Yeah,
seriously.
Right on.
Honestly, a
Let's definitely
pleasure
do it
and
again.
an honor.